Welcome to the debate. Usually when we talk about the transfer of knowledge, there's this underlying expectation of institutional authority.
Right.
It's a lot like architecture. You don't just let an enthusiastic amateur build a suspension bridge. You demand structural engineers, peer-reviewed blueprints, massive capital, and a proven track record before a single piece of steel is laid down.
Yeah, we inherently want gatekeepers. We want the comfort of knowing that the person instructing us has been vetted by some formal apparatus. It acts as a heuristic for safety and quality.
Exactly. But look at the modern digital economy, specifically the e-learning and digital product space. We are looking at an industry projected to hit what? $645 billion by 2030, and it seems to be completely disregarding that architectural framework.
Oh, totally bypassing it.
Right, so the assertion we are wrestling with today is whether an ordinary person, someone with zero technical skills, no existing audience, and absolutely no formal credentials, can realistically generate revenue by selling information products online. And frankly, the idea that a complete novice can just spin up a profitable digital product feels like an internet myth to me. Logic dictates that consumers, faced with infinite choices, will only open their wallets for established experts with, high production values.
Well, I understand why it looks like a myth from the outside, but I argue that the market does not actually buy credentials. It buys shortcuts.
Shortcuts.
Yeah. The true barrier to entry has never been lower. To succeed, an ordinary person doesn't need to be a global authority. They only need to know slightly more about a highly specific topic than a specific group of people and package that knowledge into a digital format.
Let's test that premise, because consumer expectations have adapted to an era of absolute abundance. We are operating in an information-rich environment where almost everything is available for free.
Sure.
If I want to learn a skill, I can go to YouTube and watch a highly polished, cinematic masterclass from a recognized industry leader. I harbor deep skepticism that a simple text-based guide or a basic PDF created by a complete unknown can compete in that marketplace. You cannot just declare yourself an expert in your living room and expect a rational consumer to pay you. What is the actual mechanism of trust there?
You're assuming the buyer's goal is formal foundational mastery. But if we look at Jason Fladlien's methodologies on information products, he points out that buyers are rarely looking for comprehensive education.
Really? Then what are they paying for?
They are driven by an immediate, acute problem. They want what he calls the pain before gain principle. They have a specific pain point today, and they want it solved today. A 40-hour cinematic masterclass isn't a solution. It's a massive homework assignment.
A homework assignment.
Exactly. That is why hyper-specific solutions consistently beat broad, highly produced content.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning. When someone is evaluating risk before a purchase, the strongest heuristic is a credential. Why would anyone pay money for, say, a music tutorial from someone who has absolutely no formal training? It defies the basic laws of economic trust.
It only defies the laws of trust if you assume formal training is what the customer actually values. Fladlien often uses the example of the ukulele player to dismantle this exact assumption.
The ukulele player?
Yeah, so there is a fast-growing, passionate community of ukulele players who play entirely by ear. They have absolutely zero interest in learning traditional sheet music.
Okay, but they still want to play well, right?
Yes, but imagine a Juilliard-trained musician creating a comprehensive, polished video course for them. That credentialed expert is inevitably going to insist on foundational music theory, scales, and sheet music.
Which makes sense.
It makes academic sense, but the credentialed expert actually represents the very thing this specific audience wants to avoid. Now imagine an uncredentialed, self-taught person who creates a short, simple PDF called How to Write and Arrange Songs for the Ukulele Without Reading a Single Note.
Ah, I see. So your argument is that the lack of formal education is actually the primary selling feature?
Exactly. The lack of credentials is a feature, not a bug. The short PDF speaks directly to the exact problem of a highly specific person. When that ear player sees the title, they don't look for a Juilliard degree. They think, oh, that was written specifically for me by someone who understands my exact frustration.
Right.
The more specific you get, the more invisible your competition becomes.
Okay, that's an interesting psychological mechanism, but let's be intellectually honest here. You've identified a quirky hobby niche.
It's just one example.
Sure. But in leisure activities, perhaps people prefer an informal peer-to-peer approach. But you can't just extrapolate that to the broader economy. What about a real commercial application? You can't just invent a market in the professional sphere and expect a simple guide from a nobody to generate real, life-changing revenue.
I'd argue you absolutely can, provided you understand the principle of jumping up and down in puddles, not oceans.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that metaphor.
Well, an ocean is a massive, mainstream market, like how to start a business or how to lose weight. It's full of massive waves, well-funded competitors, and credentialed sharks.
Right, the big players.
Yeah. If an ordinary person jumps into the ocean, they drown. A puddle is a micro-niche. It's so small that the big players ignore it entirely. But if you jump up and down in a puddle, you can make a massive splash and own the entire space. Consider the example of the guy selling live roaches on eBay.
Wait, live roaches? As in literal insects?
Yes, feeder roaches for reptile owners. Someone built a genuine $90,000 a year business literally breeding and shipping live roaches through eBay.
Hold on. Even if I accept that there is a puddle of reptile owners buying insects online, that is a physical logistics business.
Right?
That requires housing the bugs, feeding them, dealing with shipping, managing dead-on-arrival refunds. How does an ordinary person with no expertise turn a physical logistics nightmare into a digital information product?
Through information arbitrage, which was Fladlien's brilliant observation when he encountered this business. He noted that the breeder had hit a ceiling. Breeding physical bugs is exhausting and hard to scale.
I can imagine.
But there are thousands of people online looking for a reliable side hustle they can run from home. Fladlien pointed out that creating a digital guide called How to Build a $90,000 a Year Business Selling Live Roaches on eBay would make far more money with virtually 100% profit margins than actually shipping the bugs.
Okay, let me stop you there because I see a massive flaw in this logic. How do you even market a PDF about selling roaches to a scattered audience of people looking for a side hustle?
You don't market it to everyone. You market it to people searching for extremely specific low-overhead business models. The beauty of the puddle is that there is zero competition.
So you rely on the specificity of the search?
Exactly. If someone searches how to make money online, they get millions of hits. If they search exotic pet feeder business model, they find only your guide. You don't need a Harvard MBA to sell that. You just need to be the one person who documented the solution to that specific puzzle.
I will concede that if you can identify a sufficiently isolated puddle, the need for mainstream credentials diminishes mostly because you have a monopoly on that specific information.
Right.
But I'm still deeply skeptical because you are completely ignoring the operational barriers. Let's say I find my equivalent of the live roach puddle. Creating the product itself is a monumental task.
Is it though?
I mean, yes. We are talking about weeks of writing, filming video modules, editing, building complex sales funnels, and managing web hosting. The ordinary person simply doesn't have the time or the technical skill to execute that infrastructure.
You see, you are falling right back into the skyscraper mindset. You are assuming that for a product to have value, it requires massive infrastructure and volume. Let's look at Fladlien's very first digital product. It wasn't a 40-hour video masterclass with high production values. It was a 7-page ebook.
7 pages? Oh, come on. You cannot genuinely call a 7-page document a product. That's a brochure.
It sold like a product.
We are conditioned as consumers to equate volume with value. A 300-page textbook feels like it is worth $50. A 7-page PDF feels like it should be a free blog post. If someone paid for that, wouldn't they feel completely cheated?
Actually, they feel the exact opposite. This brings us to what Fladlien identifies as the 1-1-1 formula.
Which is what, exactly?
One specific target audience, one specific problem, one specific solution.
When you restrict yourself to that formula, you eliminate all the fluff. Fladlien's 7-page ebook solved one acute problem in a single sitting. He wrote it in an afternoon, and he sold 268 copies in less than 24 hours at $4 each.
But why would anyone pay for just 7 pages?
Because of the principle of instant gratification. Think about the cognitive load of a 300-page comprehensive book.
It's heavy.
Yeah, it takes weeks to read, digest, and implement. It feels like work. A 7-page guide that solves your immediate problem in 15 minutes of reading is actually perceived by the buyer as significantly more valuable than the textbook.
Because you're saving them time.
Precisely. A smaller result sooner beats a bigger result later almost every single time. And as for the technical barriers, you don't need complex funnels. Today, platforms let you upload a PDF file, set a price, and generate a checkout link in about 3 minutes. The technical barrier is practically zero.
Look, I hear the mechanics of what you were saying regarding the 1-1-1 formula, but I have to push back hard on your timeline here. You referenced a 7-page PDF that sold for $4.
Yeah.
That might have worked beautifully in the early days of the internet when information was scarce. But let's look at the reality of today. We have Google, we have endless YouTube tutorials, and most importantly, we have generative AI.
Ah, the AI argument.
It's a real argument. I can open an AI tool right now, type in, "Give me a step-by-step guide to starting a roach breeding business," and I will have a comprehensive answer in 4 seconds. Why would anyone in today's market pay for information they can generate for absolutely free?
That is the most common objection, but it completely misunderstands human behavior. The abundance of free information actually creates a massive premium for curation and validation. Fladlien calls this concept better than free.
Explain that, because economically, paying for something you can get for free is the definition of irrational behavior.
It is only irrational if you place zero value on your own time. Yes, the raw data is technically available somewhere online, or it can be generated by AI. But raw data is not a solution. It's scattered, it's unverified, it's buried in Reddit forums, or it requires hours of prompt engineering to get right.
Okay, that's fair.
If a $20 guide saves a professional 10 hours of frustrating research and trial and error, buying the guide is the most rational financial decision they can make. The curation, the testing, and the sequencing have real, tangible financial value.
All right, time is a currency. I acknowledge the professionals will pay to save time. But you can't dismiss AI that easily. AI curates and sequences instantly. It is literally an unlimited free expert.
I'm not dismissing AI. I'm pointing out that AI isn't the enemy of the information product. AI is actually the ultimate modern proof point of this entire business model. Right now, ordinary people with no coding skills and no institutional credentials are using AI to create highly lucrative digital products. Let's look at AI prompt packs, for example.
You mean selling the actual text prompts that people type into the AI?
Exactly. People are creating sets of, say, 50 carefully engineered prompts designed for very specific professions: real estate agents, virtual assistants, direct response copywriters, and they sell them for anywhere from $27 to $97.
But again, why wouldn't the real estate agent just write their own prompt like, "Write me a listing for a 3-bedroom house"? It's not difficult.
Have you ever read an AI-generated property listing based on a basic prompt?
I mean, yes, they can be a bit dry.
It sounds completely robotic and generic. To get a truly excellent output, one that incorporates the right tone, highlights the correct neighborhood amenities, and structures the call to action perfectly, you have to engineer the prompt. You have to tweak the parameters, test it 30 times, and refine the constraints. A real estate agent doesn't want to learn prompt engineering.
They just want the listing.
Right. They want to paste in 3 bullet points and get a perfect listing. The creator of the prompt pack spends 15 hours testing and breaking the AI. So the real estate agent doesn't have to. The agent happily pays $47 for that pack because it buys back their Friday afternoons.
I see. So the creator is essentially performing the manual labor of trial and error and selling the optimized result.
Yes. And it goes even further with custom GPTs. Individuals are creating tailored AI assistants trained on highly specific workflows.
For example, a custom AI specifically designed to structure legal contracts for freelance graphic designers.
Interesting.
The creator builds the custom GPT, which takes maybe an afternoon, and then they sell access to it alongside a clear 10-page PDF guide on exactly how to use it to protect your freelance business.
Let me pause you there because I need to analytically separate what is happening in that transaction. In the custom GPT scenario, the creator isn't actually writing the contracts. The underlying technology is doing the heavy lifting of the work.
Correct. The artificial intelligence is doing the labor.
So the product being sold isn't the technology, and it isn't even the creator's deep legal expertise. The product is entirely the packaging. It is the application of a massive general tool to one hyper-specific, highly localized puddle.
Precisely. The technology is just the engine. The product is the packaging, the curation, and the highly specific targeting.
I have to admit, while I'm still cautious about the long-term saturation of these markets, this fundamentally shifts how I am viewing the landscape. I came into this debate evaluating information products through the lens of traditional education. I was looking at them as textbooks. And a textbook inherently requires massive authority, peer review, and a comprehensive scope. But you are framing these products not as textbooks, but as tools.
Yes. They are tools designed to fix one very specific leak in one very specific pipe.
Right. And when you evaluate a tool, the heuristics change completely. If I go to a hardware store to buy a wrench, I don't demand to see the PhD of the metallurgist who designed it.
Exactly.
I only care about utility. Does it turn the bolt I need turned today? If an AI prompt pack costs a copywriter $27 but saves them 6 hours of drafting every single week, the math inverts. It literally costs them more money not to buy it.
That is exactly Jason Fladlien's blunt value proposition for this industry. A truly good information product should cost the buyer more money not to buy it than it costs to buy it. When you hit that metric, the gatekeepers vanish.
By framing the digital product as an economic shortcut rather than an academic curriculum, you largely neutralize my skepticism about credentials. I'm not saying the Juilliard professor has no place there. There will always be a market for deep, foundational mastery.
Sure.
But I concede that if we're strictly talking about utility and immediate problem solving, the barrier to entry for an ordinary person is effectively zero. The market doesn't care who you are. It only cares if your 7-page PDF or your engineered prompt solves their immediate pain.
And that is the core realization here. The e-learning market isn't expanding just because traditional universities are putting their lectures online. It's growing exponentially because the speed at which daily tools and workflows are changing is faster than any institution can map. The market is constantly fracturing into thousands of new, tiny puddles. Ordinary people are filling those gaps with hyper-specific solutions.
Well, I am genuinely convinced that the massive infrastructural barriers I perceived were largely an illusion based on an outdated model of education. But it leaves me with a very practical, methodological question. If someone listening to this debate accepts your premise, if they want to bypass the skyscraper and figure out how to navigate one of these puddles, where do they even begin to look at the mechanics of this without making expensive, frustrating mistakes?
If we're looking for a rigorous breakdown of the methodology, the most logical starting point is Fladlien's own foundational materials. He offers a free training that functions essentially as a masterclass on the mechanics we've been discussing.
And what specifically does it analyze?
It's about a 90-minute deep dive that dissects the architecture behind successful digital products. It objectively maps out how the 1-1-1 formula is executed in practice. It looks at the psychology of the pain before gain and better than free concepts.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and most importantly, it breaks down the exact traffic models, like how you actually get a hyper-specific guide in front of that isolated hyper-specific audience without spending a fortune on broad advertising. It's a highly structured look at how uncredentialed creators are bypassing traditional gatekeepers today.
So the blueprint isn't hidden. It's available to anyone willing to shift their paradigm away from institutional walls. We started this conversation assuming that to enter a multi-billion-dollar knowledge industry, you needed the architects, the permits, and the millions in capital, but it turns out the digital landscape doesn't necessarily reward the person who builds the biggest, most expensive skyscraper. It often rewards the person who simply takes the time to map the safest, fastest shortcut through the city.
And sometimes that highly lucrative shortcut is just a 7-page guide written in an afternoon by someone who noticed a puddle that everyone else was ignoring.
A powerful paradigm shift to leave on. We will conclude our debate here. As always, we leave you, the listener, equipped to form your own conclusions and perhaps rethink the tangible value of the specific knowledge you might already possess. Thank you for joining us.